When you're finally growing a business, you will definitely want a brand guideline. But the real question is, what on earth is a brand guideline and what the heck does it even go into a brand guideline? Well, in today's Morning for Visionaries, we're going over just that. Exactly what goes into them and how to structure one and what honestly you could start using them for. So actually, let's start with the last question. What can you use a brand guideline for? It is the document, usually with most of the visuals of how to use your logo, how not to use your logo, what colors to use, what styles, tones, ideas, and in general, what things go in and around your brand. It can be as simple or as comprehensive as you need one. A few years back, I was looking at the brand style guide document, book really, for the Shed Aquarium. And now that is a comprehensive brand guideline. They did everything from the colors in the logo, the variations of the logo, and not just colors, like a black and white version or a white version to use on a dark background. No, no, no. I mean, so you can use your text here, but not here. You can use it there, but not how all the variations of sizing, styles, and orientations of the logo, what imagery they can be using, what imagery they should not be using, what specific type of imagery they should be using within the types of imagery they wanted to use. For example, they wanted to use, at least back then, they wanted to use largely glass building fronts, but you cannot use ones with brick buildings, something like that. Point being, they got so in depth with everything from photography to typography to colors to styles to tones to the language you could use. Now, that is a really comprehensive one. For your business, big or small, and especially if you're small, the most important pieces are going to be what's your logo without a few variations, such as if you're going to change the text somewhere on the logo, then a few quick variations of that. But the important ones would be maybe the regular version of the logo, just the logogram, the icon itself, a black version and a white version. Those kinds of, some basic ones. Then the colors of your brand. If you use red, white, and blue, and I don't mean RGB, it's just, quick idea. If you use a red color, a blue color, and a green color, what are those specific colors? And I mean very specifically either in RGB or in their hex values. If you use 6 colors, list every single one of them out. What fonts do you use? What sizing of fonts? And where should these fonts be used? For example, let's say you use a cursive font. Do you want somebody to say, oh, okay, well, the cursive font is in the brand guideline, and I'm going to use it for all the text? No, we want it to use only for example, for call to action buttons or scripts. Okay, let them know. Because this helps people figure out when you hire somebody, when you hire a graphic designer, a project manager, especially a developer, you can give them this document and you can say, aha, this is what we're going to work on, base all the designs, the code, the structures, everything you're doing based upon these guidelines. And you don't vary from them, because this is what's going to make us stick within our tone, our style, and our strategy to move forward consistently. And that is the important piece. So that's kind of what it is. Now, I did talk about a little bit about what goes into it. Now, the question is, how do we start developing this brand guideline to make sure that it actually works, it's good, and is consistent? So first and foremost, you probably want to start either with your logo or with colors. It doesn't matter which one. The basics of this are really going to be, let's start with the logo, because that almost always comes first with these types of things. So yes, it'll probably have a cover page. This is for you, this is for your company, this is the general quick logo. Now the first few pages are going to be the basic setups. So this usually starts with the logo because that's one of the most important things that you're going to have in your brand. So you're going to start with the logo, and it's going to have all the variations. So front and center is the main logo that you're going to have. Then the quick variations, the black and white version and the dark version, whatever you want to call them. Then if there are any sizing variations and different usages. And a next page, or depending how many variations you have, there should probably also be a page of what not to do. Because sometimes somebody might have to vary the logo to fit it in a specific spot. So you should also say specifically, do not do this type of thing. Going past that, the easiest next thing is to start with all the colors, the whole color palette, and where the colors could be used. If you want to be extremely specific, such as, we do have a red color in our brand, but it can only be used in headlines, let them know. Put the exact color. What we usually do is we either put a square with the color, what it looks like, and then the hex code, the RGB value, and then the name of the color. We like to give things, names. It's kind of makes it easy. Then it's a simple list of what you can make a table out of this thing. Doesn't matter. Just list these out one by one by one by one. All the colors that you would use. For the most part, you probably don't want to have a bazillion colors, but you will probably have more than two usually. Not always, but you might have a black color, black. You might have white. White color usually then ends up just being white with a blank square, right? White, off-white, mid-gray, dark gray, light gray. And you're thinking, oh, wow, that's a lot of colors. Well, some things, there is some variation. You should list out all these colors that you're going to be using throughout the brand that are approved. Now, that doesn't mean these colors have to be the only colors we ever see in photography and imagery. These are the colors generally for typography, things to create buttons and actionable items out of, folders, printables, and these kinds of things. Imagery is in photographs and illustrations. That's a different story for this. Now, for these colors, list every single color out that is definitely approved, and especially the main colors. And you can also split it up between the primary colors. And I don't mean the primary colors like the definition of primary colors. The primary colors for your company. If your main colors are like a mid blue, a pastel yellow, and I'm making things up, a blood red color, right? So fine, those are your primary colors of the business. These are what makes us the company. Then you can also have secondary and tertiary or highlight colors. So you can split this up whichever way you'd like. Now, going away from colors, we have the base typography, which is the fonts used, and not where they're used yet, just the fonts, an example of the fonts being used. After you list all the fonts used, then you start saying, where should these fonts be used? Now, we're not even getting into colors just yet. We're just getting into, this is a main headline. Main headlines should always be usually this type of size, usually in pixels or points, or whatever you want to do this. You have headlines are always going to be, main headlines are always going to be this font and in bold and one pixel letter spacing, right? Whatever it is, right? Subheadlines should be ever so slightly smaller, they should be italics, and they should be one shade lighter in this previous gray. So I'm going to get to that. So when we start adding more and more, then you can get to regular fonts, buttons, and so on and so forth. Now, after you got that, you can start getting to the colors. So all headlines, and I guess it really does depend on how you want to structure this. We usually like to set this up in pieces. Then you can start saying, well, main headlines should always be this true black color, but headlines on secondary pages should be off black, and headlines on a dark background should not be white. They should be this, let's say, light red color, whatever it might be. You start defining these things and showing examples of how to use these things. You can define the specific sizes of fonts used, but that is a bit more oriented towards web development. You don't have to put the actual font sizes. You can if you want to. Remember, this is your document. Past all the fonts and the colors used for fonts and the variations of fonts, that's when you get into imagery. Imagery would be the photography, the styles, the illustrations, the animations that you want to include ever in your brand and that represent your brand. These do not have to be the actual exact photographs you're using. This should, though, be the style, the imagery, the feel of the imagery that you want to put in everything that you're trying to create. So as I was saying with the shed aquarium example, if the imagery of photography that you generally want to have is the corporate glass type building, that's fine. Maybe another one, I've seen a few others where it was always silhouettes of people, always the back of silhouettes. It cannot be the side, it cannot be the front, and you definitely cannot see anybody's face. It always has to be a silhouette between a bright light in the back, and the light can be colored, but it can always has to be them looking that other way. That's another one. Whatever type of imagery you want, just add it there. It could be just, take the photos, plop them into a document, ta-da, good enough. That is fine. You can also describe the photographs. That's cool. From there, that's when We can add the imagery as well, such as doodles. Hey, we don't want to ever use photography. So you could always say, no photography ever. But let us use doodles. Doodles should always be in this kind of cartoony style, or it should be anime style, or it should be Simpson styles, whatever it might be. You list these things out so that whoever is going to see this document knows exactly what's going on. Past that, that's when you can get into the words, the tone, the verbal communication, the word communication, and you can start describing the words used, the words you should never use, what kind of tone you should always be speaking in, and so on and so forth. So, for example, if you want to always convey a formal tone, and I am not good with language, so I can't even pretend to speak a formal language, like a formal tone. But you can write that out and give examples of what speaking in a formal tone is. You can also, on the other hand, write out what is a informal or a super friendly tone. Because, for example, if you're talking to a high-powered lawyer who is in the throes of an argument right now, they're probably going to be using very succinct, and I'm not saying he's arguing the case, but they could be describing something very analytically, very logically, and trying to get to the point. That's kind of a more formal, cold type communication versus a teacher teaching a kid something, a very important life lesson. That's going to be a very different tone. But write these things out. You can even write out whom you're targeting and whom's supposed to be speaking about these things. So this document, a brand guideline document, is more than just logo and colors. It is the everything that is your business and that makes the brand, whatever it might be, the visuals, the tone, the way it speaks, the way the brand feels, the way the brand's supposed to make people feel. It is all these things in this one document so that whenever you and by the way, this is not the mission statement, and it's not that's a different thing. This is you hand this document to the new web developer you hire, the designer, the marketing team, and they will know by reading this thing all the exact tones, styles, and imagery and feel and emotion somebody should ever have when experiencing your brand. And that is a brand guideline document. We'll try to leave some in the notes for you to see and show you examples of short ones and larger ones. But if you have any questions on creating a brand guideline document, leave them in the comments. We'll be sure to answer. And if you want to create one for yourself, give us a call. We're always happy to work with you to make such a cool brand guideline document because we do have some decent experience and we even created a really long, fun one for ourselves. Just so you know, if you want to do this properly, it's not a 5-minute process. It does take a while. So there's your morning for visionaries on what a brand guideline document is and what goes into it. Thanks. See you next time. See ya.